Don't believe everything you see on YouTube. And I'm saying this from a video on YouTube. And I look at myself not as a guru, but more as a guide in a way, right? So I'm not here to try to convince you to send me a bunch of money, pool it together, and invest it into real estate like this entity allegedly did. I think that is one of the harder things to do when it comes to real estate, where you're pooling dollars together. There's so many unknowns where when it comes to real estate rehab and development, it's really one of the hardest things to do in this category, in the real estate category. And when you have multiple properties, such as what this individual was trying to do with these investors' dollars, it can get real really quickly. What's going on, folks? Eddie Carrington, mayor of Flux City. Today we are reacting to a video out in Chicago. A number of investors sent their money over to this investment firm that was to, in turn, purchase and rehab a number of houses in Chicago. But unfortunately, it looks like they have been left hanging from this entity. And so we're going to react to it because this is something that I get questions about pretty consistently. I have money, I want to put it in real estate. Can I invest it with you? And we're going to talk about that scenario throughout this video. And hopefully you gain some type of knowledge and understanding of just how difficult and challenging it is from a developer slash investor side. But also, in order for you to make sure you're doing your due diligence, verifying who these individuals you're sending your money to, very, very important. Otherwise, you could find yourself in the same scenario as these investors did. So let's jump right into it.
People across the country say they've been ripped off, all because of an alleged housing scheme. An alderperson is also upset about the vacant homes, which are an eyesore for neighbors. They are boarded up, dilapidated homes on the city's south side.
It hurts the neighborhood because all
Good looking duplex, needing some siding and windows and doors and probably the whole 9 yards on the interior. But this is something that, from an investor standpoint, doesn't look bad from the outside in. So pretty fair property.
these people that live here think that something nice is going to happen in the neighborhood.
These 4 homes, which are supposed to be rehabbed, are now at the center of several lawsuits filed by 8 investors from all over the country.
I'm married with 2 kids, providing for my family. It's devastated my life.
They say they've lost thousands investing in the Chicago homes with Steve Raymond, the CEO of an Illinois-based company, Selective Real Estate Investments.
When you're ghosted like this,
What's intriguing about this is we're looking at investors from all over the country that are investing in Chicago, which is a pretty hot market, even with all of the challenges Chicago is having. The market, the real estate market is still flaming hot right now. And when it comes to the investor side, purchasing a property, depending on the location, obviously, and fixing it up and potentially either selling it or renting it out seems to make sense. And so this individual was able to convince, it looks like, either 8 or 9 people to send him a pretty good chunk of cash. So
it's unsettling.
The investors, represented by this local attorney, Anna McNamara.
And it started with 1 or 2 phone calls, and then it steamrolled into numerous.
You can see Raymond in these YouTube videos, one in an announced recorded Zoom call from January of 2024.
I'm also a licensed general contractor, so that's one of the main reasons of my success is I can control not only the purchases but the rehab of the property.
The videos,
for one, don't believe everything you see on YouTube. And I'm saying this from a video on YouTube. And I look at myself not as a guru, but more as a guide in a way, right? So I'm not here to try to convince you to send me a bunch of money, pool it together, and invest it into real estate like this entity allegedly did. I think that is one of the harder things to do when it comes to real estate, where you're pooling dollars together. There's so many unknowns where when it comes to real estate rehab and development, It's really one of the hardest things to do in this category, in the real estate category. And when you have multiple properties, such as what this individual was trying to do with these investors' dollars, it can get real really quickly. And so even though he was a GC, you still have to really take pause and think through if this individual is capable and competent to be able to execute their vision. And in this scenario, it doesn't look like that's the case. But realistically, this happens more than you realize. This happens pretty consistently throughout this industry, where a GC or an investor thinks that they know what they're doing. Let's say after some success, redeveloping one or two properties at a time, but now they're like, hey, look, it's time for me to level up and raise dollars and go at it from a standpoint of developing or investing or rehabbing 6, 7, 10 properties at a time. And in this scenario, it looks like this individual just wasn't capable, allegedly, based off of what we're seeing here in this video. But this happens more than you realize. And this is something that is extremely, extremely important for you to really take your time and determine if this makes sense for you or not, because you can lose your money very, very quickly.
Are cited in another one of McNamara's lawsuits representing a ninth investor. She says it shows how he pitches his business to potential investors.
I do business in 4 different markets. There's a huge upsides to invest in Chicago if you want to do it.
The lawsuits allege that Raymond solicited these investors to loan money for the rehab of his boarded up properties, and that investors would get 30 to 33% of interest payments from Raymond up front.
Red flag. Red flag. 30 to 30 wait, I can't even 30 to 33% interest payments up front. That sounds too good to be true. And you have to really make sure your antennas are up when it comes to these types of promises, where you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like that's realistic. And it's not. 99.9% of the opportunities that you invest your money in, you won't see 30 to 33% interest payments up front on a consistent basis, unless they allegedly are trying to defraud you and convince you to give them your money. So be very, very cautious when you hear these types of astronomical numbers and returns before putting your money into something such as this play here.
And then at the end of the 6 months, they would get all of their principal back.
But these consumers say they've all been waiting at least a year for those returns of the.
So 30 to 33% of an interest payment up front, and then within 6 months, all of your initial principal back. That is insane. That is insane. And that just, once again, screams alleged scheme, to a point where you have to be very, very vigilant, and you have to think realistic in these types of scenarios. And that deserves a pause, right? That deserves us to really think twice, literally, in this video about the offer that this investment entity allegedly provided to these investors.
Initial investment, and that the interest payments have stopped.
A great loss to me. I mean, that's a lot of money to lose in my book.
This is a lot of my savings that I put forward.
They say with principal, interest, and attorney fees that Raymond now owes them money ranging anywhere between $75,000 to $550,000.
Slowly building this up.
Wow. That's a lot of money. That's a ton of money. And that is also incorporating the interest payment, the 30 to 33% interest payment that it looks like this entity promised the investors. But that's a ton of money. That's a lot of money to invest in a concept such as this, when this is, once again, one of the hardest things to accomplish in real estate. Redevelopment or rehab, from a standpoint of doing multiple properties all at once within that short period of time. You got mobilization challenges, especially, I'm going to assume this individual is using the same team across the board, if in fact they are executing on their plan or trying to execute. So they may have one plumbing team, one electrical team, one HVAC team, and 6 months to rehab a property is doable, but 6 months to rehab multiple properties within that window of time, with limited resources and limited skilled trades, that is a challenge, especially with the amount of properties that this individual said that they were going to be rehabbing within that 6-month period of time.
To get to a point to where I can retire comfortably and not have to worry. And yeah, this is a huge setback.
Some of the consumers say they did get some interest money, but the majority of the lawsuits also allege that it came from the money they invested, alleging a Ponzi scheme.
Where is the money? Can we just get our principal back?
Raymond's attorney, who was also named in many of the lawsuits, told the I-Team, Mr. Raymond is not willing to comment on pending litigation other than to deny that there was any wrongdoing or fraudulent activity. Rather, this appears to be an attempt by the attorney for these various individuals to gain an advantage in the pending litigation by using the media to exert pressure on Mr. Raymond. There is no Ponzi scheme or other fraudulent conduct whatsoever. These cases are nothing more than foreclosure actions, and any assertions other than that are wholly without merit.
This is an interesting statement from the individual's attorney, and this is where he's like, hey, look, this is what they signed up for. This is what they signed on the dotted line for. And depending on what the contract says, because we don't have access to the contract that the investors signed, there may be a scenario where, hey, look, if in fact these particular conditions, if in fact we find ourselves in this particular scenario, then we may not be able to pay you back your interest and your principal. Therefore, that may give this investment house and this entity the ability to kind of negate the payback of their interest payments and possibly their principal. And so there was a mention of foreclosure. So maybe there's a need to go through the foreclosure process, sell those properties on the market, and allow for that process to execute. And the investors in turn are able to divvy up the profits from the sale of the properties. And that's how they kind of become whole again, or close to whole. But at the end of the day, this is an ugly scenario that once again happens more than you realize. And I am saying alleged because once again, we don't have all of the details from both parties, but this is definitely not going to be fun for the investors themselves.
We're not going to tolerate it, not only in Chicago, but especially in the 6th Ward.
Two of the homes in question are in Alderperson William Hall's ward in the East Woodlawn neighborhood.
No neighbor should have to wake up to an abandonment that they could have possibly bought.
As neighbors also complain.
That's important too, right? The neighbors in that community would theoretically love to own these properties, especially after seeing the condition that they're in, right? Looks like the yard is a mess. Maybe they're secured properly. Looks like in this scenario, they did a decent job covering up a broken window or a door that doesn't work. But in theory, I would assume that if these neighbors had the ability to purchase these properties at a pretty affordable price, maybe they would, and in turn not have these properties in the condition that they're in now.
About the vacant homes.
We've had squatters in the house.
Raymond's investors say they're struggling with empty wallets.
This is a huge loss. There's no words I can put that can describe like the anxiety that I've had.
Raymond's attorney also added that several properties are close to being completed and will be listed for sale soon, and he's working on getting loans repaid as diligently as possible. Raymond has not yet filed official legal responses to the lawsuits in our report. Rob Sherrill, before investing with anyone, research them. If the return sounds too good to be true, well, you know what we're going to say. It probably is. So you want to make sure you do all your research.
So there you have it, folks. This is a scenario where you have to be diligent about how you invest your money outside of the traditional formats. In theory, real estate looks like a pretty good investment, but in reality, it's really hard to execute when it comes to rehabbing a number of properties all at once. Now, interestingly enough, it sounds like this investor is still working on a handful of properties and potentially finishing them up. It sounds like they may not have been able to do so in the time frame that they promised the investor, which is a mistake from the investor house or the investment entity itself. But it could be possible that this individual is able to provide that equity, that investment, and potentially those interest payments back over to the 8 or 9 investors that they highlighted in this video. But really make sure you do your due diligence when you're investing in real estate, investing in entities and organizations and people like us, because you could find yourself getting burned. Appreciate you listening to me ramble, watching the video. Please like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.